You've been a veteran of many of these campaigns, I guess it would be fair to say. How do you think this one's going? It seems to be a little bit sort of tentative at the moment. There's a bit of, sort of jabbing going on, but no knockout punches as yet.
It's really boring, Mike, to be honest with you. I think that steady as she goes for Keir Starmer will guarantee the keys to number 10. So he doesn't need to rock the boat. So he's having a war within his own party at the moment over Diane Abbott and a couple of other candidates and
Right.
rushing through some of the new blood that have been around the Labour Party for the last year or so. But actually, that suits him just fine because the more he can show that he's moved away from Jeremy Corbyn days and into the centre,
Mm.
more people will probably think that it was a reasonable decision to vote for him come July the 4th. And so this kind of internal war suits him as long as he can stay on the right track in terms of policies. But when we're talking to people, outside of the Westminster bubble, what they're really saying is that we just want stuff to work. We
Mm.
want our trains to work. We want the NHS to work. We want our schools to be able to teach our children without, supply teachers or, classrooms falling down. And the problem is that both politicians are probably avoiding those subjects. Rishi Sunak wants to talk about national service and getting people, young people, conscripted in some way into some kind of community service.
Right.
When you bump into people on the streets, that's not the thing they're talking about. That's not their problem. And so both leaders are going to, head towards the election, trying to avoid the big issues of the day.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we notice here, is, as you know very well, Katie, is what people are talking about. And obviously today, being spurred on by this terrible incident last night in Dalston, where there's a drive-by shooting, words you wouldn't have ever thought you'd use about an incident in London. You think it'd be more like something that would happen in downtown LA. A drive-by shooting, a child in hospital with serious injuries. And people are talking about crime and talking about not feeling safe on the streets of Britain, particularly just walking around in London now.
Well, absolutely. And these are really extreme cases and luckily still very rare in
Mm.
Britain. Listening to some of your calls and your comments earlier around, arming people on the streets, we don't want to go down that route.
Right.
That only ends in a bad way. However, people are already experiencing low-level crime. This week, some of my employees had some of their laptops stolen,
Right.
and we can track them to the address. We know where those laptops are.
Right.
And yet the police give us the crime number so that we can claim on our insurance. They have absolutely zero interest
Mm.
in going to that address, and God knows what else they might find while they're there, arresting those people and stopping that low-level crime that's going on in London. If you're a tourist right now, you don't want to be coming to some of these areas
Right.
and thinking that you're unsafe. So it's not just bad for people that are living here, voting here, paying their taxes here, and want to feel that for them and their children are safe, but it's also really bad on an international
Right.
stage. Some of our key cities are feeling less safe than they used to be. So that should be a key point of the election. And I see that Yvette Cooper has come out today with some
Mm.
plans around that. But it's been too bad for too long. And they do need to be able to get a grip. Of course, it's Sadiq Khan in London that controls
Yeah.
these things. So it's not just it's a Tory fault, it's a Labour problem. It's actually a problem that spans, by both sides of the political
Yeah.
divide. Really needs to be.
Absolutely. It does. And I mean, for Rishi Sunak's perspective, I mean, aside from the national service conversation that he had, much of what he's coming out with seems to be about money. It seems to be about finances, because I think he's hoping that people will start to feel better off. But I mean, he's only got 5 weeks. I don't think anyone's going to feel better off between now and July the 4th at all, are they?
No, and it's not very retail. It's quite technocrat. It's very managerial, and it's very kind of paper pen pushing. All in the profit and loss, there's a little bit more money in people's
Yeah.
pockets. But as I've said before, people have signed up for long-term commitments, such as remortgaging their houses
Right.
on much higher interest rates than they had a couple of years ago. Their energy bills are more than they were a few years ago. Their food bills are 25% more than they were a few years ago. So no one's going to feel, richer in the next 5 weeks. They're probably not going to feel richer in the next 12 months by
No.
any means. So, the idea that on paper it might look a little bit more positive does not relate to the pay packets or the spending commitments that families have up and down Britain.
No, exactly right. We had Nigel Farage in here yesterday, and he said, forget about whatever the Tories are telling you. They've already lost this election. There's no way that they can win it. I mean, are there any Tories that actually think that they can win it, do you think?
Well, people have been looking back as to why did Rishi Sunak call it right now? Why did he do that when actually you're 20 points behind the polls? And this is a secure your base strategy. So people that are listening at home right now to my comments, Mike, will be thinking, actually, do I want to risk what we've got now, potentially getting better, or I'm done with 14 years of Conservative rule.
Yeah.
This is about securing as many MPs in a loss as possible, if that makes sense. So right now, the possibility that the Tories could try and save 200 MPs in Parliament. That means they could possibly have Labour in one term of government and then have a good base to come back from. I think the danger was that the longer Rishi Sunak went on, the longer the Conservatives went on, they were looking at 100 saved seats come the autumn, and that is possibly looking at 2 terms of a Labour government. So it's a strategy to try and shore up the core base. And if you look at all the policies since Rishi Sunak announced the election, you'll see that they really do play to that core Conservative audience, whether or not it's that national service offer, whether or not it's an offer to pensioners for more money in their pockets. This is really playing to their vote base in the hope they can hold on to some of those safe seats. So the idea of the red wall in the north or the blue wall, this is for the birds, right? It's now about those core seats, 15,000 constituency majorities or more. They're the seats they're trying to hold on to.
Yeah, I mean, that is the problem, isn't it, for them? Because at the moment, I mean, I'm thinking it might go to a sort of much closer end result than is being currently predicted by the polls. But the polls are not really moving. And I mean, I've only really been doing this for a week. I mean, I came in yesterday and I said to my producer, Christian, I said, this time last week, we didn't even know we were having an election. I mean, that's how fresh it is. But it feels like it's been going on forever.
But indeed, and I think that people would have been really bored by the autumn. But of course, we're in a scenario now whereby the Conservative Party called an election to call Labour out and try to catch them out. And actually, it's called Conservative Party out. They don't have enough candidates in seats. They don't have enough money in those seats. They're kind of whinging, and some of the emails have been publicly leaked and or sent out by error. So they're not in a great state to be able to go and fight this election. And so really, some of these candidates, their leaflets aren't even printed. They're not even, I think it's this Friday, tomorrow, they have to be selected by.
Yeah.
So you're going to see a rush of new names you've probably never heard of before in 4 weeks' time, hoping that people will put a cross next to them in their ballot box. So it's not an ideal scenario. So whilst it feels like to the public this has been going on forever, inside these camps, they are running at the speed of light, trying to catch up on an election decision that caught everybody out.
Right, exactly right. Great to talk to you, Katie. Thank you very much indeed. Katie Perrier there, former Downing Street Director of Communications, now British Public Relations Specialist and columnist, of course, for The Times.